The story of Troy stands as one of the most captivating legends in human history. A blend of myth, heroism, love, and tragedy that has echoed through the centuries. At the heart of this tale lies the Trojan War, an epic conflict that supposedly took place over 3,000 years ago between the ancient Greeks and the Trojans. The war's central cause, according to Greek mythology, was the abduction or elopement of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, by Paris, Prince of Troy. Helen's husband, King Menelaus of Sparta, enraged by her loss, called upon his brother Agamemnon and the kings of Greece to unite in vengeance, leading to a colossal expedition against Troy. What followed was a 10-year siege that became immortalized through Homer's epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. These works painted a vivid portrait of valor and human emotion, introducing legendary figures like Achilles, Hector, though long regarded as myth. The ruins discovered in the 19th century by Heinrich Schliemann at Hisarlik in modern-day Turkey suggested that the city of Troy may have truly existed, giving a historical dimension to the ancient legend. Beyond warfare, the tale of Troy explores themes that remain timeless: love and betrayal, pride and destiny, the glory of victory and the sorrow of loss. It mirrors the human condition itself, our desires, ambitions, and flaws. Whether seen as a historical event embellished by myth or a purely poetic creation, the legend of Troy continues to inspire art, literature, and imagination across generations. It is not merely a story of a fallen city, but a reflection of the eternal struggle between honor and fate. The origins of the Trojan War are rooted in both divine intrigue and human folly, blending mythological grandeur with political tension. According to Greek legend, the conflict began not on the battlefield, but at a divine celebration. All the gods were invited to the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, except Eris, the goddess of discord. Angered by her exclusion, Eris threw a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest among the goddesses." The act sparked a dispute between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claiming the title of the most beautiful. To settle the matter, the gods chose Paris, the young prince of Troy, as judge. Each goddess sought to bribe him. Hera offered power, Athena offered wisdom and victory in war, and Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, captivated by desire, chose Aphrodite, sealing his destiny and that of his city. Helen, however, was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. When Paris journeyed to Sparta under the guise of diplomacy and persuaded Helen to return with him to Troy, the act was seen as both an insult and a betrayal. Menelaus, enraged by the loss of his wife, appealed to his brother Agamemnon, king of Mycenae, and together they summoned the former suitors of Helen, Greek princes and warriors, bound by oath to defend her marriage. Thus, a divine quarrel set into motion a mortal war. What began as a judgment of beauty ignited one of the most legendary conflicts in ancient lore. The Greeks, united under Agamemnon, launched 1,000 ships toward Troy, marking the beginning of a decade-long struggle born from love, pride, and the will of the gods. The Judgment of Paris is one of the most fateful episodes in Greek mythology, a divine contest that set in motion the legendary Trojan War. It began when Eris, the goddess of discord, cast a golden apple inscribed with the words, "To the fairest," among the goddesses at the wedding feast of Peleus and Thetis. This simple act of mischief sowed rivalry among three powerful Olympian goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claiming the apple as her own. Unable to decide between them, Zeus, king of the gods, appointed Paris, a prince of Troy known for his fairness and beauty, to judge the contest. Paris was living humbly as a shepherd on Mount Ida, unaware that his decision would shape the destiny of nations. The three goddesses appeared before him, each attempting to sway his choice with irresistible offers. Hera, queen of the gods, promised him power and dominion over all of Asia. Athena, but Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, promised him something even more tempting: the heart of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, overwhelmed by desire and seduced by Aphrodite's offer, awarded her the golden apple. His choice enraged Hera and Athena, who vowed vengeance upon him and the city of Troy. Though Paris believed he had gained a great prize, his decision would ultimately bring ruin to his homeland. The Judgment of Paris symbolizes how vanity, temptation, and divine rivalry can alter the course of human fate. In choosing love over power and wisdom, Paris unknowingly set the stage for one of the greatest tragedies in ancient mythology: the fall of Troy itself. The abduction of Helen stands as the spark that ignited the Trojan War, blending passion, betrayal, and divine manipulation. After awarding the golden apple to Aphrodite, Paris was promised the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. However, Helen was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta, and her abduction, or elopement, as some versions suggest, became the cause of immense suffering for both mortals and gods. When Paris traveled to Sparta under the guise of a diplomatic visit, he was welcomed warmly by Menelaus. But when the king left for Crete, Paris, aided by Aphrodite, upon learning of Helen's disappearance, Menelaus was furious. He invoked the oath once sworn by all her former suitors to defend her marriage and honor against any man who would wrong it. Kings and warriors across Greece, including Agamemnon, Odysseus, Achilles, and Ajax, rallied to his call. Thus, one woman's abduction, born from a goddess's promise, became the pretext for a decade-long war that would change the ancient world forever. The abduction of Helen by Paris of Troy set the ancient world ablaze, transforming a personal betrayal into a monumental clash between nations. When King Menelaus discovered that his wife had been taken, he was overcome with fury and humiliation. Seeking justice, he turned to his brother Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, who eagerly seized the opportunity to unite the Greek kingdoms under his command. Together, they invoked the Oath of Tyndareus, a vow made by all of Helen's former suitors to protect her marriage and defend her honor, ensuring that every Greek leader was bound to avenge the insult. Messengers were sent across Greece to summon its greatest heroes: Odysseus of Ithaca, Achilles of Phthia, Ajax of Salamis, Diomedes, Nestor, and many others. Though reluctant at first, each eventually joined the campaign, forming one of the mightiest coalitions in mythic history. Under Agamemnon's command, a fleet of 1,000 ships gathered at Aulis, their sails ready to carry vengeance across the Aegean Sea. However, the gods themselves had divided loyalties. Hera and Athena, still angered by Paris's judgment, favored the Greeks, while Aphrodite and Apollo protected Troy. The winds refused to blow until Agamemnon appeased the goddess Artemis with a tragic sacrifice. His daughter, Iphigenia, a sign that the war would demand terrible costs from all. At last, the fleet set sail for Troy, carrying with it the hopes, ambitions, and wrath of an entire generation. What began as a quest to reclaim a stolen queen became a war ordained by the gods, driven by pride, revenge, and destiny. Thus began the Trojan War, a decade-long siege that would test the limits of human courage and divine intervention alike. Once the winds at Aulis were finally favorable, the vast Greek armada, said to consist of 1,000 ships, set sail across the Aegean Sea toward Troy. The fleet was a symbol of unity among the often fractured Greek kingdoms, brought together under King Agamemnon of Mycenae. At his side stood many of Greece's greatest heroes: Menelaus, determined to reclaim Helen; Achilles, the unmatched warrior of Phthia; Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca; Ajax the Great, known for his immense strength; and Nestor, the wise king of Pylos, whose counsel guided the younger warriors. The journey itself was not without hardship. According to legend, the fleet was initially blown off course, and several Greek contingents, such as those led by Protesilaus and Philoctetes, faced tragedy. His sacrifice marked the beginning of the long and bloody campaign. Upon arrival, the Greeks swiftly began their assault on the Trojan coasts, raiding nearby towns and cutting off supply routes to weaken the enemy. Yet despite their strength, the city of Troy, protected by massive walls said to have been built by the gods, proved impenetrable. King Priam of Troy and his valiant son Hector organized strong defenses, and the war settled into a prolonged siege. As months turned to years, the Greek warriors faced not only the enemy, but also the Siege of Troy remains one of the longest and most legendary conflicts in ancient mythology, spanning 10 relentless years of warfare between the united Greek forces and the proud city of Troy. What began as a swift campaign to reclaim Helen, wife of King Menelaus, soon turned into a grueling test of endurance, loyalty, and divine influence. At first, the Greeks believed victory would come swiftly. Under the command of Agamemnon, their vast army besieged the city and raided the Trojan countryside. Yet Troy's defenses were formidable. Its towering walls, said to have been built by the gods Poseidon and Apollo, proved unbreakable. Inside the city, King Priam ruled with wisdom, while his sons Hector and Paris led the Trojan forces with valor. The war soon fell into a rhythm of raids, duels, and long stalemates, each side gaining and losing ground without decisive victory. Among the Greeks, Achilles, the mightiest warrior of his age, was both their greatest strength and their deepest source of conflict. His unmatched skill in battle made him nearly invincible, but his pride and anger often caused division among the Greeks. When Agamemnon took Briseis, Achilles' war prize, the hero withdrew from battle in fury. His absence proved disastrous. The Trojans, led by Hector, drove the Greeks back to their ships and nearly burned their fleet. Only after the death of his beloved companion Patroclus, slain by Hector while wearing Achilles' armor, did the enraged warrior return to battle. His vengeance was swift and terrible. Achilles slaughtered countless Trojans and finally met Hector in single combat outside the city walls. In one of the war's most tragic moments, Hector fell beneath Achilles' spear, sealing Troy's fate, but deepening the sorrow on both sides. Amidst the cruelty of war, despite Hector's death, Troy endured. The gods themselves remained divided, Hera, Athena, and Poseidon aiding the Greeks, while Aphrodite, Apollo, and Artemis defended Troy. The divine quarrels often shifted the balance of war, with mortals suffering the consequences of celestial rivalries. As the years dragged on, disease, famine, and exhaustion gripped both armies. The siege's final turning point came not through strength, but through cunning. Guided by Odysseus, the Greeks devised the plan of the wooden horse, a massive gift left as if in surrender, hiding soldiers within. The Trojans, believing the war finally over, brought the horse inside their walls. That night, the hidden Greeks emerged, opened the city gates, and allowed their army to pour in. Troy was consumed by fire, its people slaughtered or enslaved, and its once great walls reduced to ruins. After 10 years of bloodshed, the war ended not with honor, but with treachery. A reminder that even the mightiest heroes fall to pride, and that no city, however divine its walls, can withstand the destiny woven by the gods. The fall of Troy became an eternal lesson on the cost of desire, revenge, and the fragile glory of war. The Trojan War brought forth a generation of legendary heroes whose courage and flaws defined the epic struggle. Foremost among the Greeks was Achilles, the greatest warrior of his time, famed for his unmatched strength and near invincibility. His wrath and valor shaped much of the war's outcome, yet his pride and tragic fate made him one of mythology's most human figures. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, was celebrated for his cunning intellect and strategic genius. His idea of the wooden horse ultimately secured Greek victory. Ajax the Great, towering and fearless, embodied brute strength and honor on the battlefield, while Diomedes proved a fearless fighter, favored by Athena herself. Among the Trojans, Hector, noble prince and defender of Troy, stood as the city's greatest hero. His bravery, loyalty to his family, and sense of duty made him a symbol of true heroic spirit. Aeneas, another Trojan warrior, guided by fate and the gods, would later journey to found the lineage of Rome, carrying Troy's legacy forward. These heroes, both Greek and Trojan, fought not merely for glory, but for ideals, honor, love, and destiny. Their deeds and sacrifices transformed the Trojan War from mere conflict into one of the most enduring legends in human history. The wrath of Achilles is one of the most defining moments in the Trojan War, capturing the destructive power of pride and emotion. The conflict began when Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces, seized Briseis, a captive woman awarded to Achilles as a prize of honor. Feeling insulted and betrayed, Achilles withdrew from battle, refusing to fight for a commander who had shamed him. His absence proved disastrous. The Trojans, led by Hector, gained the upper hand and drove the Greeks back toward their ships. Only after the death of Patroclus, Achilles' beloved companion, did the hero's fury reignite. Consumed by grief and rage, he rejoined the war with unstoppable vengeance. His return turned the tide of battle as he slaughtered countless Trojans and finally confronted Hector outside the walls of Troy. In their fateful duel, Achilles killed Hector, and in his rage, yet, when King Priam humbly came to beg for his son's body, Achilles' heart softened. This moment revealed the humanity within his fury. The balance between glory and compassion. His wrath, both divine and tragic, became the heart of the Iliad and a timeless symbol of human passion and consequence. The deaths of Patroclus and Hector mark the emotional and dramatic climax of the Trojan War, embodying both the tragedy of friendship and the futility of pride. When Achilles, angered by Agamemnon's insult, withdrew from battle, the Greeks faltered under the fierce Trojan advance. The Trojans, led by Hector, pushed the Greeks back to their ships and threatened to burn their fleet. In desperation, Patroclus, Achilles' closest companion, begged permission to fight in his place, wearing the hero's armor, to rally the Greek troops. Achilles reluctantly agreed, but warned Patroclus not to pursue the Trojans to the walls of Troy. Once in battle, however, Patroclus's courage and success overwhelmed him. He drove the Trojans back and even struck down Sarpedon, the son of Zeus. But in his overconfidence, he disobeyed Achilles' warning and attacked Troy's gates. There, Apollo, the Hector, pierced Patroclus with his spear, killing him and claiming the armor of Achilles as a trophy. When Achilles learned of his friend's death, his grief turned into uncontrollable fury. His sorrow shattered his pride, transforming him into a force of vengeance. Rejoining the war, Achilles hunted Hector across the battlefield, determined to avenge Patroclus. Their final duel, before the walls of Troy, was both heroic and tragic. Despite Hector's bravery, he fell to Achilles' spear. Achilles, blinded by rage, desecrated Hector's body by dragging it behind his chariot around Troy's walls. Yet later, when King Priam came to beg for his son's remains, Achilles showed compassion, returning the body for proper rites. Thus, through the intertwined deaths of Patroclus and Hector, the story revealed the dual nature of heroism, its glory and its devastating cost. After 10 long years of brutal warfare, neither the Greeks nor the Trojans could claim victory. Troy's walls, said to be built by the gods, remained unbroken, and the Greek army was weary and desperate. It was then that Odysseus, famed for his cunning, devised the plan that would finally end the war: the creation of the wooden horse of Troy. The Greeks built a massive wooden horse, hollow within, large enough to conceal a select group of their finest warriors, including Odysseus, Menelaus, and Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles. The rest of the Greek army pretended to abandon the siege, sailing away and hiding behind a nearby island. When the Trojans discovered the horse left at their gates, they believed it a gift of surrender to the goddess Athena, symbolizing Greek defeat. Despite warnings from the prophet Cassandra and the priest Laocoon, who cried, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," that night, as Troy celebrated, the hidden warriors emerged from the horse, silently opening the city gates for the returning Greek army. What followed was a massacre. Troy was set ablaze. King Priam was slain at his altar, and its people were either killed or enslaved. Helen was reclaimed by Menelaus, while survivors like Aeneas fled to begin new destinies elsewhere. The fall of Troy was both triumph and tragedy, an end brought not by strength, but by deceit. It marked the collapse of a proud civilization and the close of an age of heroes. The flames that consumed Troy became a lasting symbol of human pride, the cruelty of war, and the inevitable hand of fate that spares no empire. The Trojan Horse stands as one of history's most ingenious and deceptive stratagems, a masterpiece of cunning that brought about the end of the mighty city of Troy. After 10 years of fruitless siege, the Greeks, weary and desperate, realized that brute force alone could not breach Troy's divinely built walls. It was then that Odysseus, famed for his wisdom and cleverness, conceived a daring plan that would rely not on strength, but on trickery. Under his direction, the Greeks constructed a gigantic wooden horse, hollow on the inside and large enough to conceal a group of elite warriors. The structure was presented as a sacred offering to Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, meant to ensure safe passage for the Greeks' supposed return home. To complete the illusion, the Greek fleet sailed away, hiding behind a nearby island, while one man, Sinon, stayed behind to convince the Trojans of the horse's innocence. The Trojans, believing the Greeks had finally surrendered, debated whether to destroy or accept the gift. Despite the dire warnings of Laocoon, who declared, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," and the prophecy of Cassandra, the Trojans brought the horse into their city as a symbol of victory. That night, as Troy slept in celebration, Sinon released the hidden Greek soldiers from within the horse. They opened the city gates to the returning Greek army. Under the cover of darkness, the invaders poured in, setting the city ablaze. King Priam was slain, and the proud city of Troy fell in ruin. The Trojan horse became a timeless emblem of deception and human folly, a reminder that trust, when misplaced, can destroy even the mightiest of civilizations. The sack of Troy was one of the most devastating moments in ancient legend, a night of fire, slaughter, and divine vengeance that brought an end to the proud city after 10 years of war. Once the Greeks emerged from the Trojan horse and opened the gates, their army flooded into the sleeping city. What followed was chaos. The Trojans, caught unarmed and unprepared, could offer little resistance. The streets ran with blood as the once mighty fortress of King Priam fell to ruin. In the palace, Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, brutally killed the aged Priam at the altar of Zeus, ignoring the sacred laws of sanctuary. Hecuba, Priam's queen, watched helplessly as her sons were slain, her daughters taken captive. Cassandra, cursed prophetess of Troy, was dragged from Athena's temple and claimed by Agamemnon, an act that would later bring about his own tragic death in Mycenae. Andromache, Hector's widow, was enslaved, and her young son, Astyanax, was hurled from the city walls to prevent any future heir to Troy's throne. Helen, the woman whose beauty had sparked the war, was reunited with Menelaus. Some say he nearly killed her in rage, but her beauty softened his heart. The Greeks, having achieved victory, faced their own suffering. Many never returned home, cursed by the gods for their cruelty. Storms scattered their ships. Agamemnon was murdered upon his return. Odysseus wandered for years before reaching Ithaca. The sack of Troy thus became more than a tale of conquest. It was a story of the tragic cost of human ambition and divine retribution. Troy's ashes symbolized not only the end of a city, but the downfall of an age of heroes, remembered forever in sorrow and legend. The return of the Greeks after the fall of Troy was far from a glorious homecoming. Though they had won the war, the gods were angered by their arrogance, sacrilege, and cruelty during the sack of the city. As the Greeks set sail, storms and curses awaited them, scattering their fleets and bringing ruin to many. Agamemnon, the commander of the Greek army, returned to Mycenae only to be murdered by his wife Clytemnestra and her lover Aegisthus, in revenge for the sacrifice of their daughter Iphigenia. Menelaus and Helen were blown off course and wandered for years before finally returning to Sparta. Ajax the Lesser, who had violated Cassandra in Athena's temple, was struck down by a divine storm and perished at sea. Only Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, managed to survive his long journey home, though it took him 10 arduous years of trials and suffering, as told in Homer's Odyssey. The once great heroes who had fought for glory found their triumphs turned to tragedy. Thus, the return of the Greeks served as a final reminder of the gods' power and the price of human pride. The victory at Troy brought not peace, but the unraveling of those who had conquered it. When the flames of Troy finally died, few of its people were left to tell the tale. The city that once rivaled the greatest powers of the ancient world was reduced to ashes, and its survivors were scattered across distant lands. Queen Hecuba, once proud and regal, was taken as a slave by Odysseus, her sorrow breaking her spirit. Andromache, the widow of Hector, became the captive of Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, and was forced to serve the very line that had slain her husband. Cassandra, the cursed prophetess who had foreseen Troy's doom, was carried away by Agamemnon, only to be murdered alongside him upon his return to Mycenae. Yet amid the devastation, one man, Aeneas, cousin of Hector and son of the goddess Aphrodite, escaped the burning city with a small band of followers and his aged father, Anchises. Guided by destiny and divine will, Aeneas carried Troy's legacy across the seas. His journey led to the founding of the Roman lineage, ensuring that Troy's spirit would live on through Rome's rise. Thus, though Troy perished in fire and sorrow, its name endured forever, reborn through exile, memory, and legend. The legend of Troy endures as more than a tale of war. It is a timeless reflection of human nature, of love, pride, betrayal, and fate. Through the heroism of Achilles, the wisdom of Odysseus, and the tragedy of Hector, the story reveals both the glory and the sorrow that define humanity. Though the city fell in flames, its spirit lived on in myth, poetry, and history. From Homer's Iliad to countless retellings across ages, Troy's echo reminds us that empires may crumble, but the power of story and the lessons of human passion are eternal.